Good morning, everybody. Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions and the host of the Break It Down show. Hey, today's guest is Wade Lightheart. You can get him at wadelightheart.com, among other things. He is a three-time all-natural national bodybuilding champion. He's advisor to the American Anti-Cancer Institute. He's the director of education at BioOptimizers Nutrition. By the way, if you go to BioOptimizers Nutrition and write in the code podcast10, you will get 10% off of anything in the BioOptimizer store. He's the founder of Prosperity and Health Alliance, and he's a master trainer. Look, this guy is in great shape. He looks fantastic with this shirt on or off, and you're going to love him. You know, this time of year, it's easy to start getting ready to do resolutions and everything else. First thing is, we know Pete Koch would say, today is the day, not the first, not the second, not next year. Today is the day to get into better shape. And if nothing else, we're talking to me, you're talking to a lot of us that aren't being active enough. And Wade, hopefully, will get the message in your head in a way that makes you say, I need to get moving today. So hopefully you guys will appreciate this. Plus, Wade's just a good dude. I just really like him. Okay, standard things apply. Rate and review the show. Share the show. These are great ways to support us. There should be new shirts up, if not today, tomorrow at breakitdownshow.com. If you go to Break It Down Show, you should see them on the front page. Get a shirt. Might do beanies this year. Might do bucket hats. Let me know what you guys like. In terms of charity, you know the deal with this. SaveTheBrave.org. Click on the donate tab, pick a monthly amount, and just kick out 10, 20, 35, 100 bucks a month, whatever it is that you can afford. If you don't want to do money and you want to do your time or your expertise, hey, that'd be great. We'd love to hear from you. Either way, support SaveTheBrave.org. We're doing great things, and we'd really love to have you along the ride with us. Hey, everybody, have a great day. Here's Wade Lightheart.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey there, this is Wade Lightheart, and I'm here today on the Break It Down show. Excited to be here.
And now, the Break It Down show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Me too. So Wade does some of the stuff that we all need more of. We were just talking off mic, and it's always the best stuff. One of my friends whose podcast I'm going to be producing is Dr. Tracy Gappin. He's been on the show before talking about peptides and epigenetics, that kind of thing. You guys also remember Attila Haidu, who's trying to solve the cancer problem with epigenetics and repainting cells. And so I thought I'd bring Wade on to continue these conversations. And Wade just hit me with a massive stat on men's testosterone levels. And getting back to Dr. Gappin, he said the number one thing his clients come to and they say is, I want to be the dude I used to be. And their wives are like, I want him to be the guy that I fell in love with. Not to turn back time, but just like, how do we get you to be what you're supposed to be? Because this number, will you tell us this number about us in the 70s?
Yeah, so basically, if you look at the testosterone levels for men across the board, every age demographic, doesn't matter, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, you name it. As a whole, every bracket is down 40%. That's the average down. So there's going to be some people that are down 60%, 80%, 100% down from where men were in the 70s.
Yeah.
So the average 20-year-old today, right now in 2019, has the testosterone levels of a 60-year-old man in the 1970s. This is a massive problem, and I'll tell you where it triggers. Number one, overall state of happiness for men. Testosterone is clearly linked to a variety of good feelings and good functioning of just an unbelievable cascade of hormones, including mental health. And so a lot of guys don't feel they have that same drive. They don't feel like they're winning anymore. They feel they don't have the motivation, or they might not feel as focused or whatever. All this is directly correlated to low testosterone levels. Now, is it because of estrogens? Is it because of electromagnetic pollution? Is it because we're staring into screens all the time? Probably all of the above, but that doesn't change things. This is the stats for everybody listening to this. And the bottom line is, imagine running anything in your life, anything, at 40% less than what it should be. So let's take 40% of your income away. Let's take 40% of your energy away. Let's take 40% of your free time away. Let's take 40% of your happiness time away. Like, think about that in those type of terms. And we're going, wow, we're really playing with a deck that's half full. And how do we fill that up? And I think as men, we need to address it. I think men are we're taught to kind of just deal with it. We're kind of go along. I know I'm stressed a little bit. I know I'm working too hard, but I got to do this. And we kind of have all these rationalizations, but the data's in. And the bottom line is guys know it, but here's the part that I think a lot of guys are really in the dark about. Women know this. And all of the women that I deal with, and I have a good fortune to do that, they're with guys, they're in their 30s, they're in their 40s, and they're there's something wrong with my guy, and I don't know how to get to him. They love him, they care about him. They're not getting turned on in the bedroom. They don't feel that he's winning like he used to be, or has that confidence or that attractive piece. And it's nothing to do with their career. It's nothing to do. Those are all signposts. It really comes down to their endocrine system's messed up and they got to address it.
So first off, let's back up for a second here and let everybody know to find out more. And actually, we hooked up a deal too. Biooptimizers.com, Break It Down show. And the code is podcast 10. Podcast 10, and you can get involved. And then just to kind of illustrate what we're talking about here, as we go down the get access to awesome health course, turn tide against uncontrollable food cravings. Oh, okay. That's me. Check. Learn to stay lean and trim without sacrifice. Yes, please. How to optimize your brain for super intelligence. Yes. You talked about 40%. If you took 60% of the air out of your tires, how well would your truck perform? How expensive would it be on tires, gas, time?
And if it's serious systems, we're not talking just about fuel. We're talking about, this is like your steering control is off or your engine blows in the middle of the desert. We're talking about this is life-threatening components. And it's also a failed marriage. Let's just look at that, for example, because of intimacy issues or focus issue, whatever that happens to be. You look at a failed marriage. What is the economic and emotional cost of that for people? It's devastating for guys, particularly in the legal environments that we now exist in, I think, which somewhat they're slanted in a way that's not fair for men. Let's be frank. The reality is, let's say you're making $100,000 a year, you're doing well, and you're living that lifestyle, you get a divorce. Well, that divorce, all of a sudden, you have to maintain that $100,000 lifestyle for your partner. She continues on with the same level. So now you have less the partner, you're splitting let's say you're dealing with your kids, and now you've got to double the amount of income you're bringing in just to maintain your same lifestyle. It's an impossible task, and it's very depressing for a lot of men, and they've got themselves in trouble. And how do you get out of that, right? And then on top of that, you're dealing with 40% of your energy capacity, 40% of what you've got for your mojo. You're in trouble. Yeah. And you got to turn that ship around. And the way to turn the ship around is turn around your inside endocrine system and start nailing it there. And then the other things will start to fall in place. So what on earth has happened? I mean, one of the things I'm always fascinated by was when you look back, a generation or two ago, people didn't live as long. There's all kinds of folks that died of things that they would not die of today. Heart disease, lung disease. I mean, we're not drinking as many martinis. We're not smoking as much. Maybe we drink more wine nowadays, but all these things that used to put us in a grave at 62 and think, hey, that's a pretty good run. People 62 are climbing Mount Everest regularly, So is it that we're outliving our normal ability to create testosterone? How do we make sense of this? Great question. I think there's a variety of factors that's happening. I think number one, there's a beautiful video that was put on by the CBC. It's the first government film to actually nail this about 7 or 8 years ago. And it's called The Disappearing Male. And basically, they've been tracking males in virtually every species. And what's happening is the influx of plastics into the food supply, into the water supply, into our lifestyle so deeply is subjecting embryos to anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 times the amounts of estrogen they would have it. So as a man, as a 40s, we're getting subjected to estrogen, which is having an impact on us. But when you're in that developmental stage of an embryo being born with 1,000 to 10,000 times the amount of estrogen that normally be present. This is impacting the formation of male genitalia, the production of the essential hormones, including testosterone inside the body. So we're starting our men off behind the 8 ball right from birth.
Hey, this is P.J. Turner from the Break It Down Show, checking in real quick to ask you this. John, Scott, and I all support Save the Brave with our time, our location, our effort, and our money. Each month we give a small amount. Do the same with us. Go to savethebrave.org, click on the donate tab, pick an amount that you want to come out each month, and they will handle all the rest. I stand behind these folks. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the show.
We're starting our men off behind the 8 ball right from birth. And this is progressing. It's affecting birth rates. It's affecting all sorts of different areas. And it's left largely untalked about. It's not discussed. It's not clarified. And except in the secret back rooms where guy's going to see his doctor and he's getting his tests. And he's like, look, my testosterone, I got the testosterone of an 80-year-old grandmother, like what's going on here? And the other thing is, it's interesting, is a lot of female testosterone levels are actually increasing. So we're getting this complete reversal in estrogen and testosterone.
So wait, female testosterone levels are going up, males are going down, plastics are everywhere. I mean, it really is like I had a breakfast today at a cafe in the JW Marriott, and they handed me a cardboard base with a plastic shell on top. And I thought, I'm just going to walk 20 feet away. Just hand the damn thing to me on a plate. Why are we consuming, cardboard? What I think is cardboard, really could be anything, and then this plastic top. But yeah, you don't think that plastic is shedding off microparticles and you're just constantly eating plastic all day long. That's part of what's driving this whole alternate meat, for like fish, because you can't eat a piece of fish that's clean anymore. It's not possible. And so that has to have an impact on our systems.
Yeah. And then you have all the mercury toxicity. Then the other thing is we're spending so much time staring into video screens on our phones, on our computers, on our televisions. And the whole blue light exposure is throwing off circadian rhythms. It's interrupting sleep cycles, which are foundational component for producing the endocrine system requirements that we have. And so these modernizations, which is wonderful as they are now having a direct physiological impact with people. And it's easy to kind of say, yeah, I know what everybody's doing and stuff, but the results are, the data's in. We're down 40% on all levels. Yeah. And, right now, in a lot of areas, women and men are under fire. They don't know what's the traditional roles or expectations. There's less, I would say, men's camaraderie organizations that were prevalent for years. So men helping other men and being around other men and just living within those cultures. And I think it's having a very serious impact on all of us. And we've got to turn the trend around. And that's what our mission is, that Bioptimizers, our mission is to end physical suffering and activating physical health. Yeah. And it came from the sports performance level where, in bodybuilding and things like that. And then, as I moved into this model, I had no idea that all that background in performance optimization that athletes use could be so relevant for men in their 40s and 50s. And I just feel really grateful that I was on that journey. And now I'm in a position where I can help guys, turn the ship around, and it's fun and it's invigorating. And I love seeing guys kind of take their rightful place and start winning again.
So yeah, give us some of your background so we can understand how you got to this point where you realized this and broke into this marketplace. By the way, we're talking to Wade. So you can look him up at Bioptimizers. And again, you can use the discount code podcast10 should you decide to do anything. But let's talk about your background a little bit.
Yeah. So I was a kid, grew up in rural Canada, playing hockey, all that sort of stuff. At 15, I got bit by the bodybuilding bug. My sister gave me a magazine of Troy Zuclato and two pretty girls on the cover, and had all these muscles. And I bought into the Joe Weider lie and built a gym. And in my barn, I was 50 miles from the nearest city, 5 miles to my nearest neighbor. So I literally started training Rocky style, reading every Arnold Schwarzenegger article I could and buying all the magazines because there was no internet or things like that. So yeah, we went through that whole cycle, and it was, I went on to exercise physiology at the University of New Brunswick. After that, I started mentoring other people. My bodybuilding career took off a little bit and ended up representing Canada at the Mr. Universe contest. And now the interesting thing was I did that a few years before I got into meditation and switched to a plant-based diet, and was, I think, one of the only people in the world to have competed at both the Mr. Universe and the World Championships with no drugs and as a vegetarian. And in order to do that, I had to get really focused on, number one, how do I assimilate, digest, absorb, and utilize the food that I was eating, especially with such a limited protein content. There was no plant-based protein powders or anything back in those days. And so I figured all that stuff out and how to maximize my own natural production of testosterone so that I could recover and train and without using endogenous supplies. And that research, now parlayed into now, which is so critical for men.
Yeah. Wow. So you really got into it. Why did you choose to go plant-based? Because, I mean, like you said, your job is to be huge.
Yeah, it was an experiment, and I think there was a lot of myths out there. And so I was like, okay, well, let's, it's really easy to believe in myths because they're so pervasive and, it's kind of crowd mentality. So I said, well, I'm going to challenge this. I did a little experiment for 2 weeks without meat. And then I said, I'll go 2 more weeks. And then I said, I'll go another month. And, 2 months later, I was like, okay, I think I'm done. And, my genetics and epigenetics allowed for that to be easier for me. I did run into some issues around digestion. That's got me turned on to the role of enzymes and probiotics. So I was talking about enzymes and probiotics and cold water therapy and mind machines, 15 years ago, as we were, taking what I was doing as an athlete. No one was doing it in those days. That was the original biohacking.
Right.
And so, because I was looking at ways that you could do it without using hormones, which was what common in bodybuilding, people take exogenous testosterone and anabolics and a variety of other agents in order to build muscle. And I was like, I'm going to challenge that. And so I would say that although I didn't become the world's best bodybuilder or anything like that, I certainly reached a very high level and competed at the world championships and, at a respectable level. And from there, I just took that technology and started applying it in everyday life with thousands of people. And it's been great.
Okay. So let's try to illustrate the guy that needs to get a hold of you. Like, we're talking directly to a lot of dudes around the world, really. I mean, we've got audiences in 80 different countries. It shocks the hell out of me. But these are people who like what I like. And look, I know that I'm not as, I don't know, virile as I was 20 years ago, for sure, and I would like to get some of that back. So let's sort of paint a picture of what this looks like for someone who's like, maybe that's why I'm so tired. And maybe that's what, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think first off, you got to start and find out where you're at, and where you're at is probably worse than most people would actually want to acknowledge. But data clears the way. And as my business partner says, it'll shape destinies. So I did a podcast with Dr. Paul Maximus, I think it's episode 25 in Bioptimizers. And he writes, and you can check it out. And it basically breaks down, there's 5 basic tests that everybody needs to do as a guy. And if you do these 5 tests, you do them once every 5 years and you're good. And this will give you a great snapshot. So those tests are, first thing you want to do, a blood sugar responsiveness. So it's called the HOMO-IR. So that's an insulin and sugar response. So basically how sensitive you are to insulin and sugar. That's a big factor because that's a role in testosterone production, hormones, health, fat storage, all that sort of stuff. Big one. A lot of people have problems there. Another one you want to look at is the pulse test, which looks at protein lesions inside the body to see where your heart age is. Like where's your heart relative to your age? Because, diabetes, heart attacks, and cancer are the big killers of guys and the things that suck the most life out of it. So you cover that. And from that, you're going to get a good episode of, where you are as far as your risk for cancer, your risk for heart attack, your risk for diabetes. And then from there, you want to go to get a DEXA scan. So a DEXA scan is what the NFL uses to determine the body fat percentages, the muscle distribution, bone density in the body relative to your age and your weight and all that sort of stuff. And so you get a real hardcore snapshot of where you're really at, which is another great device. So you can say, okay, you know what, I'm 5% body fat over. I've been tracking, this way, my bone density's up or down. And then now you can build a program based around that. And then the next test that you'd look at is, there's 2 more. One is the SpectraCell. which is they draw some blood, they ship it off to a lab in Houston, and they spin it in all these different vials, and they start adding nutrients to see which nutrients have the most positive effects. And that's really, really awesome. And so from there, you can see how you're sucking on, various neurotransmitters to augment, maybe low testosterone or, peptides in the brain that affects your mood and all this, because they're all correlated. And so from there, you get a good snapshot of what you're missing in your diet, what you're missing, what you're having trouble absorbing. And then you can prescribe specific nutrient programs based on your specifics, data, and genetics. And then you want to do a genetics test to see if you have any weird methylation patterns and things like that. So they can look at your genetics, your epigenetics, what's your risk factors, what are the best diets you're going to do on, all that sort of stuff, training, all that stuff. And then the final piece would be a Dutch test, which is that is the ratio of all your hormones, how they interact, how you convert the various precursors to all your hormones and how they go through cascades, and then how you can affect. Once you have that, you have a complete snapshot of what's going on your body. And you have an expert like Dr. Paul come in, or Dr. Katrine, who I work with. And these two will come in and they'll look at your whole profile, your genetics, your epigenetics, your lifestyle, your hormones, your nutrient things. And then you build out a program that rebuilds you from the inside before you go down the road of, say, testosterone augmentation or things like that. Because once you step into the TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, which has shown a lot of positive effects, but once you go down that road, you can't come back. Like, you go past that doorway, you're on it for life. And I believe that you want to build up your resource base as deep as possible before you go down that road. You want to explore all avenues so that when you do go down that road, you get more bang for a buck. It's pretty much inevitable for everybody at some point in the game. And, you kind of set your timelines. I'm fortunate enough. I've got enough going on for me now that I'm still good, but I'm setting myself up. So when that day comes where I kind of tip below what I would call the acceptable performance realms, I'm ready to make that move, but I'm doing it without compromising my health. I'm augmenting it because I've done it smartly, as opposed to just, oh, I got low testosterone, run to the doctor, get a prescription, start your testosterone replacement, and not really monitor things. I think that's a recipe for long-term disaster. And I've seen that happen over and over. They get this big spike, 3-6 months, then they crash and burn because they don't have the resources to support it. I mean, part of the reason that we downregulate testosterone production or hormone production is because we're trying to preserve the materials that we have in the system. And so, the body's more important on self-preservation. But as a guy that wants to be at the top of his game, he's got to cover all those bases. And that's what we help people do.
Wow, man. That is one of the most powerful segments I think anyone's ever talked about in terms of talking to us middle-aged dudes and their spouses. 5 tests, and I'm going to link something to that so you guys can all reference that as you're going through. I'm assuming that you've got a resource for these 5 tests where you can go, or is that something you just go to your doctor?
Yeah, if you go, I think it's episode 25 with Paul Maximus. There's also a blog post on Bioptimizers. You can actually just get that, talk to Paul, reach out to him. He'll kind of break it down for what the cost involved. It's not that expensive, all in. And then there you got it. You've got exactly the snapshot of where you're at. And from there, it's just the technology exists now to really, this is the encouraging part of the call, is never before has the technology been accessible for guys. So we can take control of it. We can take, not only that, you get the privacy of having a professional who understands these things. There's no kind of like public biases, or you don't have to worry about other people's opinions or what people think. And then you can get educated, you can get informed, put yourself on a program and literally reap the result. 6 months down the road, 9 months down the road, and I've seen enough of these cases happen, is that people are like, you don't know what you're missing until you get back to it. And the bottom line says you're rocking. Huh. So, that's the best part. The stories after you see the guy 6 months, you see the guy a year down or 2 years down the road, and they're killing it and feeling great about life. And that's where the real win is when you wake up in the morning, do you feel like you? Mm-hmm. And if you're not, great. There's a great article also by Scott Abel, who was my former bodybuilding coach. And he wrote a really great article about how do you know if your testosterone levels are on, just by how you feel. And he really describes, I think, better than anybody I've seen about what it's like to have low TRT and or like low testosterone, and what's the feeling and and it's very fascinating because he does a great job of kind of nailing how a lot of guys in our age category feel.
Yeah.
And recognize this isn't normal. And we the thing is, it seems normal because there's so many guys suffering from it, but we're suffering in silence. We somehow think it's something against us, that we're not man enough, we're not good enough. Somehow we missed the boat. And then when you have that lower testosterone, your confidence starts to get chipped away just from the biochemical reality that you don't have the same chemical resources in your brain. And so you're in a double hole. You don't know how to reach out. You don't feel like you can reach out, and you think somehow that it's your fault that you got that way. And I'm here to say it's not. This is an environmental situation, and the reality is we have that options to kind of move forward now and solve these problems and with the right professionals. And it's great. It's simple. It's easy, and it's effective. So that's exciting.
You know, you said something really important in this whole thing too. Is again, we're a system. So if you don't have T, let's be honest, we probably don't have a lot of other things too. If you were, I don't know, pre-wired to be manic, you don't get less manic as you get older because your body works on less and less things. We had the ladies from Prellis on my other show, Popping the Bubble, and they were talking about organ disease. And we look at organ failure as a time to replace. But she's like, most people have some level of organ failure in all of their organ systems, partly because we don't, we're asking the body to, like you said, suck on resources, go put an additive, a bad additive in your fuel, in your car, and put 40% of the air in the tires. And how great is that car going to operate? It's just not going to operate well. So, man, that stuff, that just speaks directly to like who I am and, who I'm trying to not be. There's a lot of people out there who talk about this stuff. It's a little daunting to think about, okay, in my limited budget that I have, how the heck am I going to, pay for these things? What does stuff like this cost? I mean, like if you're on a limited budget, are you just priced out of this market?
Well, the reality is it's going to cost you a couple $1,000 probably for all the testing.
Yeah.
And then you're probably looking at anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 to kind of recover that process if you're going to invest in everything that you need over the next 6 to 9 months. Mm-hmm. But I think what a lot of people, and that's a big chunk for a lot of people, but I think what people have to recognize is not so much what's it costing me to get this done, it's how much is it costing me not to get it done.
Yeah.
And the reality is the statistics are pretty self-evident. And that is, if you don't correct this trend now in your 40s, this doesn't get better.
What?
It gets worse.
Oh, no.
The cycle continues downward. So if you're already feeling that you're behind the 8 ball now, or you're not where you need to be, this isn't going to magically transform. This isn't going to change. So you need to have a sit down with your spouse. You need to sit down and say, look, I need to be better. I've got to do these tests. There's something that's not right with me. And I'm asking for your support. And that's probably the most difficult conversation. But here's the upside. Virtually every guy that I know that sat down with his significant partner and had this conversation, the woman is incredibly relieved because they are going out of their minds, talking to their girlfriends. They all share what's going on. They're all concerned about their husbands and their partners, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to connect with you. They don't know how to reach to you. They don't know how to talk to you, not only about your needs, but about their needs that aren't being fulfilled. And when you invite them into that conversation, you'll be surprised. They'll be like, okay, whatever we need to do. And how transformational it can be inside a relationship. Because, you get in a relationship for a long time, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, the shine kind of goes off and all those things. And you get kids and mortgages and careers and 401ks. And, and then there's health crises with parents or kids. And there's all these different things that suck on the relationship capital. And what happens, people kind of drift apart and each person feels that they're kind of doing more than the other. And they're concerned about the other one, but they're trying to swim ashore with 500 pounds on their back, and it's too much. And so you got to get your partner involved. You got to talk about this and why it's important and get their resources behind it so that they're included in the process. And you know what? When you do that, it opens up this whole channel, and it opens up a lot of other discovery and conversations that can really be inviting for the relationship. And I think that's ultimately where everybody wants to be. They want to have a happy home. They want to make sure they're a good partner. They want their partner to feel good. And you want to go out there and do all the things that you set out to when you got together years before.
Yeah. I mean,
and if you don't, here's the other thing. And if you don't, that relationship will end.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's so many of these
yeah.
paths that lead to a big pile of money and misery, you know, like,
100%.
Okay, you can always blow your heart out. Is that any cheaper? You know,
yeah.
You could, and then it's even harder to get going again. I mean, it's one of these things where, you know, you're always investing in your retirement. I think this is a good parallel. You know, you've been putting away $160 into your Roth every month, or whatever that number is now. You're making sure you do the stock employee purchase program. But here's another aspect of your life. You have to maintain the system, especially like if you are saving for retirement, you should want to be able to walk around when you're retired, because like you said, when you're in your late 40s, early 50s, everybody has a significant life scare from 52 to 65. Everybody.
Hey, this is P.A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it. But here's another aspect of your life. You have to maintain the system, especially like if you are saving for retirement, you should want to be able to walk around when you're retired, because like you said, when you're in your late 40s, early 50s, everybody has a significant life scare from 52 to 65. Everybody.
Yeah.
And the more prepared you are, the easier that test is going to be.
Well, and here's the data. There was a fellow in the New England Journal of Medicine about 8 or 9 years ago. His name's Professor Oshansky, and I read the research, and he talked about life expectancy. And back then, he said that the life expectancy of Americans are actually declining. And he demonstrated it statistically. And the administration at the time prevented him from publishing a lot of the data, because he said that the children of today, life expectancy would be significantly less. He also introduced another concept, which is called the disability adjusted life expectancy. So what that means is that someone who would be on some form of permanent disability for the rest of their life. And that for the United States is people at 62 years old. That if you follow the American way of food production, food distribution, and lifestyle. So if you look at the Americans, they lead the way in GDP productivity per person. They work longer than any other group in the world. The standards in America are much higher than almost everywhere else in the planet, and in demands and times and energy and focus and drive. Yet the result is, from a health perspective, that there is a cost to all that. And that cost, really hits in your 40s and 50s. And the bottom line is you're paying off your mortgage with a credit card. And you can do that for a while, but there's a cost. And that those two deltas kind of come together in your 40s and 50s in an endocrine cycle. This is where guys go through the midlife crisis, and it's all cascading down. And I'm here to say, hey, it's normal for this to happen, but you have to make adjustments. And I was fortunate enough that I was making investments in my health bank account from day one. Mm-hmm. And that allowed me to survive some pretty horrific, I've had all the things that people, I've gone through relationship meltdowns. I've gone through business meltdowns and physical meltdowns. I've gone all through those things. But because I kept investing in that and got the resources, I was able to come through those. I mean, life is a full contact sport. Nobody gets out alive. Okay.
Yeah,
that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
We have to all recognize that. So the question is, do I want to follow that thing, have a fat bank account? Maybe, if I'm lucky. The chances of that are 95% chance that I don't, and be on a disability for the rest of my life. At 60s, I'm on proton pumps. I'm taking insulin every day. I'm taking heart medications. My dick isn't working, and my prostate's all messed up, and I feel like shit every day, right? And I'm just taking going to the bar or having some drinks at the country club to kind of alleviate the pain. Or I'm going to take some of that money that I'm spending for that retirement and say, you know what, I'm going to get some testing. I'm going to get the right experts. I'm going to do the $6 million man program for myself.
Yeah.
And I'm going to reap the results. And you know what? I'm going to live to 80 and I'm going to be totally switched on right to the day I go out, or close to it as possible. Which would you choose?
Yeah. And the whole physical side of it ignores, like, so the way I see it, there are three ways you age. And at some point, one of the three, if not multiple, fail. And it's that mental, physical, and then the spiritual side. Like, like, are your mental, your, I don't know, like, not your brain part, but like, is your mind well? Right. And
yeah,
if you aren't healthy, all three of those things are in some form of failure. Even if your body is wired to survive that genetically, doesn't mean your mind is, doesn't mean your brain is. Something's going to fail at some point. So how do you maintain, and how do you invest in that? And that's what we're talking about. So if it is, let's say it's $10,000 in a year, put that on your credit card instead of whatever else it is. And I know that's easier said than done. Look, I get it. And maybe there's some way to do some of this stuff yourself, but to understand that there are subscription programs, buy optimizers. I mean, just go there and see how this works and start the journey and start to understand just what it takes to create a robust, long lasting body in your middle age. I think that's, man, I mean, Wade, it's an incredible thing to have to think about what you have to do in life to manage all of your systems. And if you're going to pick a system to not focus a lot of attention on, let's have it not be our body.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, health is one of those things we just assume we have till it's gone, and then we don't realize its value. And then oftentimes when it's gone, we can't get it back. We just have to be bone crushing honest with ourselves and do the work, put the time in, put the energy in, put the finances in. But the flip side of that is you get to reap the lifestyle awards. I always say nothing tastes as good as I feel. And the reality is there is a possibility out there. There is this feel great optimal zone that exists, and you just got to do the things that allow you to get it. And it's accessible to almost anybody who's willing to, and it's just worth the time and energy to do it.
Right. Okay. So let's look at the guy who's sitting on the couch and he's got his calendar out in his calendar in his head. He's like, all right, Pete Koch says I have to exercise 28 hours a month. Well, that's basically an hour a day. All right. I got to sleep 8 hours or I won't be optimized. I've got to go work for 8 hours. I got to drive 2 hours total I got to go, hang out with my kids and make sure that I'm being a good dad to them. Like, I got to do some chores around the house. I'm all out of time. You've given me a 35-hour day. What do I do? I mean, it's easy to say all these things and say, I'll put the money in, but how do we find time? What are the immediate steps someone can take to get up off the couch and start trying to get after this? And then realistically, like, how long does this take to do this? Like, when can you start to be like, I'm actually doing this?
Yeah, I would say the biggest motivation that a person can find is when they get to the point of disgust and they just decide enough is enough, right? Like, I'm just not going to do this anymore, because the reality is it doesn't come down, it's not time management, it's priority management.
Right.
And so you have to be able to sit down and look at yourself. Okay, you know what? I'm not prioritizing the important things in my life right now. I'm watching too much TV. I'm surfing the internet too much. I'm looking in my phone too much. And I got to remove those things out of the picture. And you'll be surprised at how much time frees up. There's an interesting thing that happens. The more time that you spend on digital equipment, the faster the perception that time goes by. And for what I would suggest for people is take a day, get rid of your phone, and just go be in the world without your telephone for a 24-hour period and see how much time there seems to be. It's a remarkable experiment to do. And when you do that, you go, wait a minute, I'm just locked into a pattern of thinking and behaving. And this is kind of like the precursor of 1999 when they talked about the Matrix. People are plugged into the Matrix, but they're not paying attention to the signal. And the signal says, hey, you're not on your best game. You're not feeling your best. There's another option out here, and we've forgotten about that. And I'm here to remind people that it's there. We got to seize it.
Yeah.
But you look, as far as time zone, to answer your question, realistically, a person needs to commit for 6 to 12 months. Most people will be able to solve things in 6, depending on how far gone you are. But, within 6 to 12 months, you're really going to have things optimized in your life. Your training, this is where having, I call it, and it's in the 12-week course that I'm giving away to everybody when they go to buyuptheranges.com, break it down. You get a 12-week course where I actually break down in 5 to 15-minute videos everything I learned in 35 years in the industry in a simple, concise way. I give all the references. You can dive deep on it in sequence of where you put your time, energy, and your money.
Yeah.
Meditation, deep breathing practice, essential. Getting the best quality water that you can possibly do, great. And regular exercise that you like, particularly if you can get some high intensity stuff that'll really boost up your testosterone and growth hormone, even 20-minute HIIT workouts and stuff, fantastic. Those 3 things are non-negotiable. Once you get those things down, now you start working on reducing the blue light, making sure that you have the nutrients that require. But the first three things, the meditation, the de-stressing, making sure that you're properly hydrated and exercising regularly, that doesn't cost anybody very much. You can solve all that problem, in a year for less than $5,000. That's it. And it's solved for life. You got no more issues about it. Get a good water machine, get a gym membership for $500, get a few lessons with a proper coach, and then go off and do all your endocrine tests. The whole thing will cost you $5,000. You'll have a snapshot. You'll be on the track moving forward. You start feeling better and you start building a little momentum before you get into all the specialty stuff. That's where a person starts. And that's why we laid out in the course for you.
Quit making it sound so accomplishable.
Yeah, it just takes focus. And the other thing is you got to have that person in your life, and that's why I have Katrine and Paul, and I'll have another guy I call the wizard, my chiropractor. These guys are giving me real-time feedback as my advisors about what's best for Wade. Their sole purpose is to take their expertise that they've spent decades to acquire and optimize, and they're giving me their best stuff so that I can make educated decisions about what each move is ahead of me. It just takes all the guesswork, so you don't have the analysis paralysis. But the other thing is you also have that support that a person needs. There's someone that can say, hey, you know what, Wade, we've got to get your estrogen in check. We've got to, I had high estrogen levels because of all this stuff. And so we sat down with my doctors, like, here's what we need to do. Here's where it's going wrong inside the body. There's a conversion thing here. Let's do this, 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 and this. And lo and behold, guess what? It starts to transform and you feel the difference. So I'm not saying this because I've got everything perfect and everything. I'm saying I'm on real time, month to month observational components, and I'm tweaking that machine to get more and more out of it. And it feels great. And and you move from, I don't know, to completely empowered. And the value of that is exponential. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Look, we've had a lot of people who work on these problems from a variety of areas, whether it's epigenetics or testosterone or, polypeptides, but also like a guy like Brian Solis, who looks at how you run your day, and he examined our ability to focus and pay attention. And guess what? Being on your phone a lot takes away your ability to focus and pay attention. That's the main thing. It also starts to change how your brain is structured and how it works on solving problems. So you're really detuning your brain or tuning it in a direction we don't know how to manage yet. So all of these things kind of stack together where when you do get yourself more in alignment, even if it's an 80% solution compared to wherever you're at now, you are going to operate at a much higher level and likely get a lot more satisfaction out of life. And in terms of partners, gosh, I want my girlfriend to be happy that I'm around because constantly able to, like, we're going to go take vacation over Thanksgiving week. And I'm going to do my best to look at my phone once a day. That's my goal, is to just, I've got some business things to tend to and maybe some social things to plan. But other than that, I don't want to have to mess with it at all. Oh, I wanted to ask you this before I forget. When you say get good, high quality water, what does that mean? Because I can go to the machine at Walmart, 39 cents, and fill up a 5-gallon jug. I can go to literally over to Arrowhead, the mountain, then twist the nozzle on the mountain and put water straight out of the mountain into my metal jug or whatever. What is high quality water? What counts?
Yeah. So if you can get spring water, that's awesome. That's a really great thing, and it's just not readily accessible for a lot of people, and it can get expensive over time unless, of course, you have tap to the mountain, that's a different story. But if you're buying it, it's going to cost you a significant amount. And the other thing is a lot of that stuff's in plastic bottles and you're getting all the estrogen from it. So I've investigated over the last 20 years, over 160 different water systems. And there's more coming out all the time. And there's a couple of principles behind it that is important. Number one, the cleaner your water is, the better. In other words, the most contaminants out of it. And so when you're in a city, we're taking in all these chemicals that have been used to reconstitute the water and stuff that are inside our water. So it's not really water like it was designed for us to be. The other thing is oftentimes that it's very acidic and very deficient in minerals. So in my investigations, I actually went out and I bought myself a water ionizer. And why I did that is because the number one challenge of any disease is it's an inflammation. It's the silent killer. And the what counters inflammation is things like antioxidants. We hear about it in diets. But what these Japanese guys figured out is they looked at all these healing waters around the world, things like Lourdes, France, and Tlacocote, Mexico. Mm-hmm. And in Nordernau, Germany. And what they found is these waters were alkaline. They had electrical activity, that they had high antioxidant levels in the water because of the way the mountain was, or the way the water came over a waterfall. And so the Japanese recreated that and created these water ionizers years ago in the 60s and started using it in hospital treatments. Then along came a company, started making manufacturing for their homes. And I bought one of those. I've had one for 15 years. Cost me $5,000 for this machine. But I've had it ever since. I've had my water solved for 15 years. So I don't have to buy bottled water. I get it straight out of my tap. It reconstitutes tap water filters it and ionizes it. I use disinfectant. I use cleaners with it. I drink this water. It's fantastic. And recently it was proven by Dr. Horst Filzer, who put the first stent in the body to improve energy production at the mitochondrial level and to reduce delayed onset muscle soreness from working out, and served as an antioxidant. In other words, a glass of this water has more antioxidants than like what you would eat all day if you ate nothing but fruit. And so it's a great solution. And I've been using it and advocating it for a while. I actually have a video about it on the Awesome Health course. People can watch all about it. But not to discredit any other water machines, but the best, purest water that you can get, and make sure it's not in plastic bottles, and you're good to go.
But mitochondria, we all know that that's the powerhouse of the cell from our 8th grade biology class.
Correctamundo. And it's never before been so important. In fact, we developed products. One of our hottest selling products is Capex, which gives about a 20% boost on energy production at the mitochondrial level. And people take that product and they're like, wow. And it's not a stimulant. This is not caffeination where you're feeling jittery and stuff. This is just pure mental focus and energetic resources. And so that's what we're doing at Bioptimizers. We're trying to find ways to optimize people's digestion, their health, adding the components that deals with society pressures right now. And it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of people to help. So we're really excited about it.
Man, I mean, this is just like, there's so much stuff in this. First off, you should go to biooptimizers.com. And if you want to support, you go /breakitdown podcast 10. That will get you discount on whatever you decide to do. If you decide to do anything. But the thing I'm really going to encourage everyone to do is just to start assessing what you're doing. Look for a clean source of water. Try to get these 28 hours of exercise. Try to put the phone down more, and just start somewhere, and then get to the Biooptimizer guys for sure. If you're like, yeah, I would like to master my mind, health, and wellness and happiness. I would like to manage those things. I mean, it's a one thing to say, be happy and give it up to the universe, but you're saying, hey, the water you drink, the tuning the food that you eat, all of these things unlock the internal parts of you, so you can actually do those things.
Exactly. And so it's exciting times. And, the technology didn't exist before to do all these individual testing and to work things out. So it's a great time. And there's hope for anybody out there who thinks they're struggling and think they might need a boost. I'm saying you definitely do. You're right on the money. Go out and take action.
What's on the horizon that's coming up? Like, I'm excited about being able to print organs and, get like a little deck of cards sized backup kidney, thrown into your back to help with these things. That's coming like in the next, let's say the next 15 years, that'll be something that you can do. What do you see that's coming down the pipe that excites you in terms of, is it polypeptides? What is it?
Well, there's a lot of information going into the peptide equation right now, and it's still too early to tell. I mean, obviously it's promising, but for the most part, those have been used in extreme cases. And just so people know, peptides are kind of like a level down from SARMs. So there's SARMs, selective androgenetic receptor modulators. And then now there's peptides. So basically, they're able to break down the function of almost the growth or health or improvement of any single organ in the body and develop a peptide that will stimulate that without anything else. Now, primarily those were used with patients who were in palliative care situations where so they could afford the risk because based on the technology available, we had nothing else, and they've done that. And there's been a lot of great successes and there's been some failures. But over time, I think the trend is moving that peptides will come in and now kind of be the next level beyond, say, hormonal manipulation. We'll get a little bit more specific. I think also one of the big things that I'm very passionate about is cognitive enhancers through neurofeedback training. So I've been to a couple of things. I go to Dave Asprey's 40 Years of Zen and BioCybernaut. And this is advanced technology that can improve, literally in a week, you can improve your IQ and your EQ by, 10 to 12 points, which gives you a real leg up. Also, preventing some of the mental or cognitive degenerative conditions that are so pervasive with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and things like that, that's plaguing our older population in the world. So that's really exciting avenues. The genetics and epigenetics, of course, with guys like Wim Hof rewriting the books on physiology about what we can control. And now there's a variety of experiments in the biohacking space that are looking at how do we optimize these things? How do we turn on these recessive genes or these dormant genes that will activate our ability to handle super cold temperature or our ability to raise our neurochemicals to a way that we feel good all the time. All these sort of things I think are great. And then supplement science is getting better and better and better. We're able to develop the specific things that will enhance people. And then dietary specifics, understanding the role that some people do better on a plant-based diet, some people do better on a meat diet, some do some in between. And how do we find the commonalities and the optimization? 80% is commonalities, and then that other 20% is individual genetics. So when you start with those tests, I recommend it, those 5 tests that I talked about with Dr. Maximus, that's going to lay out the ground game of where you're at. And from there, you just start progressively building over it. And this is why we see athletes nowadays, competing at a high level at 40 years old. So we're extending athletic careers. We're going to extend what I would say business and professional careers as well, to allow you, I think it won't be long before we regularly see athletes performing at a high level in their 40s and beyond. That'll be common. And we're going to see people performing in the world in their 70s and 80s where, they would have been out of the picture 20 years ago. And I think that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, man, it is pretty exciting. And I think we definitely see it. I mean, look at Tom Brady. It's unheard of to be as successful as he and Drew Brees are at their age. And it's partly because they're paying a lot of money and attention to this tuning and maximizing their performance. So it's
you go to Shannon Sharp, you go to, I mean, he's 51 years old. He's hitting 450-pound bench presses in the gym. Looks great. He's performing at a high level. If you look at James Harrison, he was spending a lot of money on keeping his body together. And he was the, longest serving linebacker in NFL history. You look at guys like Breeze, you look at guys like Brady, who are spending an incredible amount of resources. And he talks about it. Tom says, he wished he was doing all these things when he first broke into the league. Yeah. He feels had he been doing them when he was 20, he probably, he's in his 40s now. He said, he probably can compete till he's 45. He thinks he has it. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But he's like, I probably could add another 3 to 5 years onto that if I had started doing that when I was 20. Yeah. And so now we're getting kids starting this in college and university and stuff. So what's interesting is there's a gap happening. And there's a great book by Yuval Harari. It's called Homo Deus. He actually wrote a book called Sapiens, The Evolution of Humans. Then Homo Deus is kind of like where we are now, and he's got 21 lessons for the 21st century. And he talks about the rapid increase in infotech and biotech and how this is actually creating 2 separate components of humanity. We're going to have superhumans, the people who have gone down this road and augmented themselves in all these different ways that are possible, and the people who don't. Reality is, if you take this out, 20, 40, 60 years, we are literally creating a split in the population and the emergence of a new species. And I think that's inevitable. And it's up to us to say which side of the tracks we want to be on, because that is where science and technology is going.
I think it's a great point. And I know you're right, because when you look at the ability to create this kind of controlled evolution, you are creating a different species. And there's no doubt we're cyborgs. I mean, just like the sleeping apps where they are prompted to wake you at the lightest moment of your sleep instead of out of a deep REM cycle. Like, it's just so much better to wake up that way, you know, and not put yourself through all that. We're getting so good at those aspects of managing the body. And we'll look back 20 years and be like, look how prehistoric we were with that. Now, like, you know, I've got all these things helping me manage what I do. My water ionizer and my peptide shake and all those things, that'll become a norm.
Yep.
I don't know what the wheat germ will be in the future. You know, remember back when wheat germ was a thing? Like,
yeah.
I gotta have my wheat germ, bro. But
yeah.
but I mean, we learn these things by trial and error, right? We find out what a good, healthy diet is. And now to find out that there's a specific Pete diet and a specific Wade diet. And then if I eat this amount of broccoli once you eat all the things you have to account for, I bet you're just full for the whole day.
It's really hard to describe for people who haven't experienced. But once, you know, I had one client, for example, a friend of mine who I've known for 20 years. I was actually his coach years ago when I was in the personal training business. And, you know, he comes from a genetic heritage and lifestyle heritage where they're very successful business people. They work hard. They just kind of do the pay the price program. And, you know, it was always a struggle for him, you know, to just kind of stay on track and break out of his patterns of family. And, you know, he ended up with some health crises in his late 30s. We got him the people I told you about. We got him some expertise. We did some testing on him. We got this all worked out. And he went all in. And he started putting the time, you know, changed his priorities, cut back on his work a little bit, started focusing on his health. And he's a year down that journey now. And he's like, I feel like I'm brand new. He said, my decision-making processes is better. I feel healthier. His whole family is now on his program. His wife, his kids, they're all living this incredibly healthy lifestyle. You know, his kids had some challenges. One of his kids in particular with genetic components, and even some of these genetic conditions are starting to correct because the kid's diet's now optimized, because the dad's diet and the wife's. And so now as the leader of the family, you have an opportunity to set the course and direction and be an example for the people in your life. And there's nothing that feels better than that and keeps you motivated and keeps you on track than setting a standard for yourself, for your family.
Well, Wade, listen, you've given me an hour and it's been fantastic. I really appreciate you for doing it. Love to have you come back on. I'd also love to have you come on with Dr. Gappin too, and just kind of freestyle about some of these things, because, you know, one shot is going to maybe put it in our brain, but those third, fourth, fifth, that 15th time they hear the message, it's going to get them off the couch and doing something else that's good for them. And even a 10% solution, you're already going in the right direction. So that's what I'm trying to do, is get folks to realize the actual initial steps they have to do. And you certainly helped us with that today, and I thank you for it.
Thanks so much. Great to be here. I love talking about the subject, and for all those guys listening out there and all the ladies that are listening on behalf of their husbands, you know, sit down today, have that conversation that you need to have for the last 5 or 10 years, set some repriorities for your life. And believe me, 18 months from now, 2 years from now, you go, that was the turning point right there. That was the point that the ship turned and we went on the course that we were really destined to be.
Awesome. Thanks, man.